And we are live. Welcome back to another episode here on the Esports Economics Podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Clark, and today I'm here with the head of marketing for the Atlanta FaZe and the Atlanta Reign, Hunter Braine. Hunter, what's going on?
How's it going? Happy to be here. I'm happy to chat. It's been a busy Monday, so my brain is still all over the place, but I'm here now.
Dude, I feel you on that. It's finals week this week, so I'm sure it's not as busy as what you have going on, but it's up there. It's there's a lot going on in my brain as well, so I definitely relate to you on that.
Finals week is right there, I would say, if I remember it correctly. That was hell week for me.
Yeah. What'd you study in school?
I was a comm major in school. Well, actually, okay. So I have 2 degrees. I have my graphic design associate's degree, which I got first. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, I don't want to do this. So I went to mass comm with kind of a focus on video production. So I was really doing a lot of editing and sound mixing and all this stuff. I had tons of classes on all those things, but I had a few social media classes, so it's funny how everything kind of worked out in that way. But yeah, comm was an interesting major. It was a lot of listening and a lot of big projects.
Makes sense. And like you said, a few social media classes ultimately ended up working in social media and marketing. And tell me a little bit more about how that came to be. So how did you go from initially graphic design associate's degree, comm degree, to now you're head of marketing for one of the largest esports orgs there is, especially in the COD League. So how did that come about?
Yeah, it's weird to say it like that. I feel like
if you're not going to gas yourself up, I'll gas you up for you.
That's fair. I will not gas myself up, so that's fair. So I started after I came out of school. My plan in my head was like, okay, I've been editing a while. I have my own editing projects that I've been doing. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be an editor, and I'm gonna look at these different firms in upstate New York, and they're gonna be great.
Yeah.
But then I toured some of them, and they were not great at all. They were very dark and depressing places where everybody would lead me in and be like, okay, here's where you'll sit for 9 hours, and you'll be looking at a screen, and you'll be doing time frames and everything like that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So I was kind of lost at that moment, and I was like, I didn't have a plan B. That was barely a plan A, so I didn't really know where to go. So I started doing what I did in college a lot, which I still do. I did it actually last year at Optic a lot. I cold email and cold DM a lot of people, whether it was different companies or different influencers. So I did that in 2016, I think, leading up in the beginning. Luckily, it was in the beginning of the year. I did that to Astro Gaming way back when, and I basically was like, hey, I'm going to be at PAX East. If you need any help with your booth, I'm going to be there. I can help as needed. And I'd never expect anything back ever.
Yeah.
But I got a response back from Greg Gervin. Actually, he's a cool dude. I think he's still over at Astro. I think he's the VP of events. But he emailed me and he was like, hey, we're actually looking for event contractors. So if you want, we could fly you out. We can put you up in the West End, and then we could pay you for the weekend. I was like, oh, okay, sweet. Sounds good. Sounds like a good deal. Which is funny because actually at that time, my parents did not know what Astro was or whatever. And they were like, are these guys legit? They just offered to pay you to go to an event. And I was like, yeah, they're legit. They're like the biggest headset company ever. So I went to PAX East. I guess I made a good impression because they kept having me back for events. So that summer, I went to PAX East. I went to E3. I went to MLG Anaheim. Went to DreamHack. I went to all these events all over the place, which was really, really great. And then through that, convention season was kind of winding down. So I wanted to find a full-time gig somehow. So I started just looking up esports, gaming jobs, whatever. I started looking for people going to events, whatever. And then I found Splice, which is an OG org, and they were actually based out of upstate New York, Rochester, New York, where I'm from, and which was insane to me that a tier 1 Call of Duty team was based out of Rochester, New York, that 15 people have heard of. But I met with Marty Strenzevok, the founder and CEO at MLG Orlando at Champs actually in 2017, and I was like, hey, you're looking for an office admin. Do you need me? And he was like, yeah, come in and we'll talk and we'll make it happen. So they made it happen. And I was his office admin for a few months. And then I quickly moved to like a marketing associate kind of role where I was mostly
Hmm.
involved with merchandising and partnerships, dealing with like Turtle Beach a lot and getting their merchandise off the ground. And then eventually Overactive took over Splice in I don't know what year that was. And at
Hmm.
that point, I I catapulted into digital media manager, where I was doing a lot more of the kind of oversight of everything, whether it was the Toronto Ultra or actually it was still Splice at that time, but whether it
Yeah.
was the Toronto Defiant or Ultra or um, whoever, I was kind of overseeing community managers and designers for those brands, and I did that for months, and that was a lot of fun. And then unfortunately, Overactive had to lay off their entire U.S. staff. Um, so at that point, I moved over to LA to work at Optic Gaming, which like when that opportunity comes up, you don't pass
Oh
that
yeah.
up.
No brainer.
So I jumped over to Optic for a year, and then everything went down with the LA Thieves, and then I moved here to Atlanta, and I now the head of marketing at Atlanta.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now going back to like the very beginning, you'd mentioned cold emailing, cold messaging people. Um, in your experience doing that, was there any lessons that you learned, like what to do, what not to do? I've asked this question to a couple people, and it's always interesting to hear their responses. I'm curious if you have any perspective on that.
Yeah, I've been asked that by a few people, and I've always said that when you're cold emailing or anything, cold DMing, whatever, don't ever expect a response. That's the
Yeah.
if you're DMing me again, being like, hey, I haven't heard from you, I'm doubly not gonna respond to you. But
Yeah.
I'd always tell them to just be aware of what that brand or influencer or whatever needs, like not what you can
Hmm.
offer. Like you can't go into it be like I'm the best social manager or the best graphic designer or whatever. You need me, but rather like okay, I saw that you were looking for this. Here's how I can provide value to you, um, and, and and don't really ask for things. Just say like here's what I can do for you,
Yeah.
and leave it at that. Just give your offer and let it sit. If they look it over and they want you, they will definitely text you back or email you back or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like I think it's really like I emailed a lot of company. I emailed Razer and Omen and HP, whatever, and none of them got back to me, but Astro did, and that was the one thing that kind of led me to where I wanted to go. So don't
Yeah.
be romantic about what you're doing or who you're emailing or whatever. Or if one person didn't get back that you really wanted to get back to you, then it's all right. There's other fish in.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dating.
I was gonna say it's a pretty it's a crude analogy, but it works. Like it's very representative of that. And you don't need a high conversion rate. You don't need
Yeah.
a 20% response rate to have success with this. You literally need one
Yep.
company or one influencer or one person to respond to you. And if you get your foot in the door, that's really, from what I've heard, the hardest part. Obviously, once your foot is in the door, you have to perform and you have to show that you belong there. But getting your foot in the door is like the hardest part. And that's what I'm realizing at this point in my own career. So that advice is always helpful. Now, when you got your foot in the door, what were some keys that allowed you to progress the way you did? Because it seems like each position you had, you moved up to like the next step in that next position. You weren't just moving laterally, you're like moving up the ladder. Ultimately, now you're head of marketing. What advice would you have there for someone coming in? Maybe they just got their first internship, got their first job, they're excited, but they're also kind of nervous because they're like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Like, I don't want to like mess up this chance. What advice would you give that person?
I think honestly, it's a lot of kind of the same advice where it's like,
Yeah.
where can you provide the most value? Like in all of our jobs, in every single one of my jobs, like when I joined Splice as an office admin, obviously I was connected to every piece of it, just because I was the kind of middleman between everything. So I was like, where do my expertises lie? Where can I provide the most value? And that was marketing. So I
Hmm.
naturally just went into marketing, and in conversations with Marty and the content people there, I moved there pretty quickly. And I even when I was there, when we had a full team, it was my own kind of I don't ambition is a strong word, but kind of my ambition and my kind of
Yeah.
intuition was like, this is where we need to go. And I still remember actually the seeing the Splice's Instagram charts where it was like, yeah, we're growing. And then when I kind of was like, okay, here's the new direction we're going to go. You just saw a spike. It just went. I'm like, okay, it works. We're going to keep doing that. And through basically just finding out where I could provide the most value and executing on that and kind of taking ownership of a lot of things, I think led me to where I am now. I think that was true in every single direction. Even when I was applying for jobs, I'm like, I don't actually know if I can do this, but I trust in my own abilities to try and to be somewhat successful. So I think it's a lot of different things. There's also kind of like I've always said this, and I was thinking about this actually on the ride home today. I was like, you need a bit of naivete to be successful to get to the next level, because in reality, I think reality hinders a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know if I'm qualified for that, or I don't know if I can do that, or they're asking for this and I need this and I only have this. Where I'm just like, yeah, I could probably do that. I've been successful so far. Let's try it out. And then you just kind of go for it. So yeah, I think it's a lot that it goes into it, but trust your gut.
No, I think that's super helpful. And then, like I said, from my own personal experience, I'm feeling a lot of that now. Like looking at job descriptions and seeing, oh, you need 5 years of experience or 3 years of experience. I'm like, shit, I don't have that. Or like, I kind of have that if I like massage the data a little bit, but like, is this going to pass? Like, am I good enough to do this? And deep down, I am confident. And I know a lot of other people are in that situation where like, you're good at what you do. You just kind of have that bit of doubt, or even, like you said, just reality that seeps in and can kind of keep you from going for it. So I think that's really helpful for a lot of people to hear. Now, what's your approach to kind of like when you're going through this process, even now, like still picking up skills, learning and improving yourself in your craft in marketing, whether it's social media or whatever other components you're doing. How do you go about learning and improving in your field? From what I've gathered, a lot of people say it's like just strictly through experience. Or were there any books that you read, or any videos, or any mentors you looked up to? Like, how did you go about that process mentally?
Yeah, I've throughout my entire, even when I was like super little, actually, I think the experience I had when I was like a child helped me immensely for where I am now. And I just like observe and listen constantly, like every single day. I think it's because actually it's funny, because when I was really young, I was a selective mute. So I just didn't talk to like anyone. I just sat and like listened and observed people all day. So I think I still do that, and I'm still like, I've always kind of joked around about this to other people. I'm like, I'm kind of my own best friend, to where like my inner monologue, and it's just like, I'm just going back and forth with myself all day, just like, okay, what's this person doing? Why is this person, even like subconsciously, I'm doing it, where it's like, if I see a conversation happening organically or something's trending on social media, I will pay attention to that and be like, okay, why is that happening? Like, why are people all over this one certain meme or trending topic or whatever? And I'll dive into that deeper. So I think just observing and listening to the world around you is by far my most pivotal skill, I think, is what also has gotten me to where I am, and just kind of been like, okay, attention's moving. Even I know, especially when I was on Splice, IGTV was becoming this huge thing. And I realized that Instagram was prioritizing IGTV videos, so anything we put on it is going to get more views than anything else. And it's just people are engaging with this weird new platform that Instagram's doing, because the last thing Instagram did was stories, and that was a huge hit, and they like stole that from Snapchat. So, and that was what caused Splice's success on Instagram when I was kind of making that change. So I think, observing and listening.
Got you. And as I said before we started recording, there's Captain making a guest appearance in the background. But no, that's super helpful. I think that's a really important and oftentimes underrated skill, because a lot of times you fall into the trap of wanting to prove yourself, wanting to show how much you know and show how skilled you are and how great you are. But I mean, you got to be able to sit back and learn and absorb. So that's definitely super helpful. Are there any examples you can think of more recently, just throughout your day or throughout your time on Twitter, that you've noticed and kind of fall into that pattern of seeing like why it worked?
I think I'm trying to think about something at FaZe. I know that I've gone back and done a lot of the logos over movie characters. I've done a lot of those, and I think I've done a lot of those in the past, and I've seen them do they've
Yeah.
been successful, but sometimes they're overused. So I've only tried to use them as like in big moments. I actually have some fun ideas planned, um, but I think that's probably a small sample case of like I know people vibe with this type of content, and if it's done well and if it's in the right tone, it can blow up.
Why do you think people resonate with it? People like it? And I don't think there's really a right answer here. I'm just really curious your opinion on this.
Yeah, I think it's bringing together two things people love. I think it's pop culture and this whatever Call of Duty or if it's Overwatch or whatever. I think it's when you combine two things that people love, they just want to share it and they
Yeah.
they just love it.
Yeah,
Especially
I
if
mean,
it's
look at
like
what happened with the Team Liquid Naruto merch
yeah,
collab from
yeah,
like a few months ago. Like people went crazy over it, and it was really nice, rightfully so. It should have gotten the traction that it did,
yeah, that was great.
because there's two things that people in the gaming community love: anime and gaming. It's a no brainer.
Yeah, and also like anything based around nostalgia will work really well.
Yeah.
Even like from a case study when Atlanta FaZe last year before I was with them did the Space Jam kind of rebrand
Mm,
that they did for playoffs. I thought that was great and it helped their interactions and engagement a ton. People love nostalgia.
for sure. Now, kind of transitioning a little bit more into what your day to day looks like as the head of marketing. Um, I guess the question is, yeah, what does that day to day look like in your current position? And you've been there for about 2 months now, kind of getting into the swing of things. What are your responsibilities? What are you taking care of on a day to day basis?
It is pretty hectic on a day-to-day basis. I will say I'm kind of all over the place because I'm coming
Yeah.
in. I'm kind of taking over general marketing and like social media, and I'm also helping our really amazing director of content, Jarrell. He's
Mhm.
leading a bunch of content, so we're kind of working on okay, how does content converse with marketing, and how can we kind of marry those two and make those two better. But then there's also the other side, the back side of things, where it's like okay, the PR side of things and the event side of things and kind of the operation side of things, and then so
Yeah.
that's a huge part in and of itself. And then there's also the just producing content for social with the help of Nick Zod and all those amazing graphics guys, and even
Yeah.
taking our own photos when we do that. And the merchandise side of things, I forgot about the merchandise side of things, but that's a huge part of it. So it's going back and forth between all these different elements of the business and just trying to, again, like I said before, provide value where I can and kind of move the needle in pretty much every facet day to day. And I've actually found in this job particularly, I have honed in my skill to jump from one department, if
Okay.
you will, to
Yeah.
another. And that's been a really interesting learning, especially like in the past month. I feel like I've gotten that down where I can jump from emails to content to meetings to whatever.
Yeah. What are some things that you found helpful for that? Because that's something I struggle with personally. Like on a day to day basis, I try my best to have like one major task, one major focus for that day. Of course, it never pans out like that. It's always school and content, or school and work, or work and content. It never quite pans out. But I like to try to keep it like, okay, today's going to be heavily focused on filming a YouTube video, or today's gonna be heavily focused on doing networking and some outreach, or today's gonna be heavily focused on just getting my schoolwork done. Because I tend to struggle jumping from school to work to content to relaxing, which almost never happens, but you try to. What have you found to be helpful for shifting states like that on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of compartmentalizing, which is insanely hard
Yeah,
to master. And I feel like I've
yeah,
slowly been improving on it job by job and day by day or whatever. And I mean, it's it's still a struggle, but I think
yeah.
it's also I found the most important thing to remember is like I don't put too much value in staying focused. So I think that
Hmm.
allows me and gives me the freedom to kind of go back and forth. Like if I get distracted and I go on Twitter for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or I go on TikTok for 15 minutes, then
Yeah,
I'm just like, all right, well that's just another thing, and I'm back to whatever I was doing or a new thing, and I just keep going that way. There's also a lot of other things. Like there's a lot of software that's like Asana's a great software that's task management. That's like, okay, here are my tasks for the day, and if I can check off all those boxes, I'm doing pretty good. And if I
Yeah.
can, I can move stuff around. So it's a lot of different things internally as well as externally that just like kind of hone those skills, I think.
Got you. Now, what are some aspects of your job that maybe either you didn't expect or someone on the outside looking in wouldn't really expect? Because I know a lot of people want to get into marketing, want to get into social media, content creation, that sort of thing. And they have this picture in their mind of, oh, I'm just going to be creating social media posts all day. I'm going to be doing this all day. And it sounds so much fun. But as you and I know, there's parts of our jobs that aren't amazing, or not really aren't amazing, but that you just don't really realize are part of the job. So from your perspective, what are some of those things for you?
I would say the biggest thing that's like always in my subconscious is people skills in that
Mm,
front, and like not only externally, like how are you going to present yourself externally to be part of this brand? Like you are a part of this brand, especially in my position. It's like you are basically representing FaZe and Rain in
yeah.
everything you do, so you probably should do well. But even like internally, like talking to coworkers or your attitude, like when you're in the kitchen or whatever and you're like having a conversation with someone, how is that conversation going to affect the rest of them and their day and their work? um, and that's something I think about, but the more I say it out loud, it's like don't get too hung up on that because then you're just constantly thinking about what you're doing and how it affects other people, which is not
Yeah.
good. But
Yeah.
if you're doing it in a way where you like I want to positively affect your day, it becomes like second nature. uh, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And people skills is definitely a common theme whenever I ask some sort of question like that, because it is so important, despite how much we might want to neglect it or pretend like it doesn't matter as much as it does, because it's oftentimes not the most comfortable thing to work on actively. It matters a lot because at the end of the day, in marketing, like you oftentimes have to persuade either an outside brand or coworkers or higher ups that this campaign is a good idea, or that this change is a good idea, or that we should do this instead of this. And just knowing how to navigate those situations is so important. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
And I think
Um,
a lot of people have different sort of places where they're most comfortable. A lot of people like
yeah.
a lot of editors I know are very like task oriented. Like I'm gonna knock this out, whatever, my day is done. For me, at least, in marketing and just me personally, I'm very HR driven. I would say is I'm very
Mhm.
like I want people around me to do the best they can, and for me, that's making them giving them the best environment to do that. And that's
Yeah.
always been my mindset. But people are built differently, and some things come easier than others.
Got you. Got you. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, getting more into the strategy side of things, like since you've been at FaZe, obviously hasn't been an extremely long time, it's been a couple months, but what has some of your focus been in those first few months from, let's just take the social media perspective, just to keep it relatively narrow for now. What's been your approach there? Is there anything that you're actively trying to change? If there's anything you can't answer or don't want to reveal, totally fine. But as much as you can, what's been your focus initially since coming on?
It's funny because the social media side of things, I would say, is the probably my is pretty low on my priority list because we're
Okay.
like for me, it was coming in, and Jarrell and Nick Zott and everyone has and Nick Dallas
Yeah.
have done an amazing job with like their tools and their socials for Atlanta FaZe, and even like looking at the reports, I'm like, okay, FaZe is the most followed in the month of May. Sick. so,
Yeah.
so what can we do? We just gotta keep doing that. And obviously, there are
Yeah.
things that we can do better, and there I do. I really like doing monthly reports of like a deep dive of like where do we compare to other teams in the league? Are we falling off in a certain area? Are we doing X, Y, Z
What are
better?
you looking at in those reports?
A lot of so my KPIs are like engagements. Or I've recently been
Mhm.
starting to do engagements per impression because I want to get people not only looking at our content or engaging with our content, but every
Got
single
you.
piece of content I want people to engage with.
Yeah.
So a lot of those percentages, and then there's always YouTube like retention rate and everything like that. So there's a bunch of different things, but that's like a deep dive. Actually, that was most of my day today was just diving into the month of May. Which was fun. But like I said, like social media is pretty low because we already have a good system in place where I don't feel like I need to
Yeah.
impact it a ton. So I've been working kind of on other areas, but it's been great nonetheless.
Awesome. So what are the areas that you're focusing on, that a lot of your time's going into now?
Right now, honestly, it's focused on helping helping our content team get some additional pieces that help us in the different like Drell and everyone is great with long form video content because that's kind of what they do and that's
Yeah.
their bread and butter. But I always enjoy doing still, so I've been doing a lot of photography and
Hmm.
merchandising kind of different developments. So a lot of people, a lot of Rain fans are asking for the merchandise store. I am pretty much working every day in order to make that happen. So that's been a big
I'll make
priority of
sure to
mine.
clip that out and post it on Twitter so you can pin it.
Perfect, because I'm actually really excited. We actually just got some things in the mail today that I think are going to be really
Nice.
cool. But yeah, I've been kind of just helping out other areas of the business and the PR front. I think we haven't really had anybody in that position for a minute, so I've been kind of helping pick that up and talking to different media outlets and even working with the FaZe Clan PR guys are awesome. So they've been a really big help to work with and different events and everything. So I've been kind of everywhere.
Yeah, no, I respect that. It sounds like a lot to have on your plate, and you're crushing it. So that's great. Um, Speak a little bit more on the PR side. Like, what does that look like? What role does that play for the overall like marketing of the org?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it is, and this is funny because it's kind of a new scene to me. I've always been in it and around it, but I've never really like led it. So I've
Yeah.
PR side obviously is public relations, and basically my goal is to improve the Atlanta Reign and Atlanta FaZe presence within Atlanta, within our home market.
Hmm.
And a big way to do that is through those local news outlets. Like there's a bunch of different Atlanta talk shows and radios,
Yeah.
articles online. So trying to reach out to them and seeing how we can work together and if they want to come by the facility, whatever, and just kind of build our presence locally. I think is my biggest push for the probably the second half of this year.
Gotcha. And I know we don't want to spill all the secrets on here. So again, if there's anything you got to keep under wraps, totally cool. But what are your initial thoughts on like how you're gonna go about doing that?
My initial thoughts are be very friendly to different news outlets and give them awesome stories to write about. So
Yeah.
that's basically what I've been doing. So working with our events guys and our ops guys, and kind of like I said, work tapping the FaZe Clan PR folks who are awesome, just to kind of get everything ready to go and hopefully get a really good Q3 and 4 this year.
Got you. Now, what things are changing like as COD is going back to LAN? I think it just got announced that Major 4, Major 5, I forget which one we're on now, is going to be on LAN. No fans yet, I believe, but it's going to be coming soon. So, from your perspective, how does that change things from a marketing perspective? Because this entire past year and a half has been all digital, all online via social media, YouTube. There hasn't been that in-person environment that really makes COD super special as an esport. So how do you see that changing things on the marketing front as we move back towards an environment where fans are there, it's LAN, it's back to what we know COD to be? How does that change things for you guys?
I think it's really interesting because I think it changes things kind of. I don't want to say back to how they used to be, but almost where it's like we have these major beats. Obviously, the majors are huge beats, but it's a lot easier to have major beats when there's actual hype around it and you can hear the fans
Yeah.
and do all these things. So I think, and it obviously makes the content guys' job so much easier
Oh
because they're
yeah.
going to new cities and everything. So I think it just helps so much. I mean, I think COVID hurt esports a lot. A lot of people, it's funny because I was telling someone this. A lot of people are like, "Oh, COVID esports must be booming because everybody's inside." I'm like, "No, live events are esports is home. Like we need
Yeah.
live events." So I think it's going to help tremendously. And I think this upcoming. I think it's in like 2 weeks or so, and we're in Dallas for Major 4, and then that will be nice. I think it'll be very like pro league, like CWL pro league kind of feel, where it's
Hmm.
obviously no fans and it's just gameplay, but it will be a lot hype, more hype, which I'm excited about. And then I don't know
Yeah.
anything about champs yet, which I think the league is planning something big, but I have absolutely no idea what it is. And then next year, I'm hoping that they they have the red carpet rolled out because those are going to be some great events.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. If Champs if Champs is on LAN and open to fans, I don't care where it is. Like I'll buy the plane ticket, I'll buy the ticket. I'm there.
That's my
Like,
thought too.
yeah, I'm super excited for them to come back because it's such a great environment, and definitely want to go there. And honestly, mostly just to meet up with a lot of people I've
Yeah,
made friendships with online over the past year and a half. Like, it's crazy. Like, good friends with so many people that I have never met before in real life. So
that's
that'll
what
also be a
LANs
good
are all
opportunity to do
about.
that.
And I told Arcee that I wanted a ring and I wanted him to hand deliver it to me at Champs. So so I have to go to Champs now.
Love that. Love that. Um, let's see. Is there anything in your day to day that we didn't really discuss or that you think is important to highlight before we move on to just some general like esports marketing talk?
Um, I think we did a pretty good job of it. I think I'm all over the place as the table shows.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, no, like I said, it's impressive that you're balancing all of that. Like, it, from what you're talking, it sounds like the amount of work that would go into like multiple different jobs. So mad props to being able to balance and perform the way you are. Um, Now, moving into just more general esports marketing talk, I'm curious, do you have any esports marketing hot takes? And you could take this wherever you want. We can go through like 2 or 3 of them, but are there any hot takes that might ruffle some feathers? Obviously, nothing problematic, but anything that not everyone might agree with, that you hold as an opinion?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like I do because I feel like I'm normally the hot take person. I'm normally because I'm always trying to look for things that people are not doing or. Mm,
You know, kind of building off that, we can get back to that in a few seconds, but you'd said kind of you're looking for things that people aren't doing. What's one of those things right now? Doesn't it really have to be like a hot take, so to speak, but is there anything that you see from a marketing perspective that everyone's going in one direction, but it might make more sense to go in the other direction, if that makes sense?
yeah, I think it's well, I do think something that teams are not doing enough is kind of going down the podcasting route. I think podcasting has always been
Hmm.
such an easy land grab, especially in the esports space, because there are not a lot of them, and there are like the few huge ones, and then there are kind of
Yeah.
spread out. Especially like when it comes to esport teams, like I think there's a few now. I mean, obviously, LA Thieves and Optic are doing the pre-shows, which are fine, but I think taking it a step further and not having your show on game day will help
Yeah.
tremendously. And just having the capabilities to have one live stream, kind of like what we're doing now, we're kind of a live stream conversation going into a long form piece of content, going into shorter pieces of content, going into audio content, even going into like text written blog content. Like there's so much content that comes out of podcasts. It's crazy. So if you have a smaller team, that's the perfect way to just pump out content. And I think the Rocker is doing a good job, obviously, because they are owned by the content king, Gary V himself. So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you on the podcast front, though. I mean, that's the whole reason why I'm doing this. Like, the YouTube videos are great, but the time that it takes to film and edit one video compared to hopping on a podcast, obviously there's prep that goes into it, but relatively speaking, the time commitment is not nearly as large. Yet now, like you said, I have an hour-long content piece on YouTube, long form. I can chop that up into either YouTube videos or clips for Twitter. It goes up on Spotify or Apple or all podcast platforms really in audio. I haven't done the blog yet just because I haven't really had the need to, but that is another, like you said, another opportunity for content repurposing. So 100% agree. And not only that, I think it just gives fans a deeper relationship with the players. I think the perfect example is the Optic podcast. They do it really well. Fans love it, especially with the personalities they have. But I think there's an opportunity there for a lot of different teams. Um, Especially when one of the most common objections to content creation for teams is, oh, our players are like tired from scrims or matches, which is a totally valid concern as an esports athlete. But just corralling everyone once a week or even once every 2 weeks for 30 minutes or even an hour or even longer if they're open to it, like that opens the door for so much content during season when they might not be streaming and doing all their solo content. So totally agree with you on that.
yeah, totally. And I also thought of a hot take. Um,
Okay. What do we got?
no, I didn't. So I think companies and brands and orgs, whatever, should be utilizing their staff more than they do.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's not a hot take on this podcast because I like 110% agree with you, but please go into that more.
So I think like a lot of us, especially in esports right now, and a lot of people getting into, especially people getting into esports right now, some of the hungriest people I've ever met, and it's crazy. And they just produce content on their own, and it's kind of, for me, in my perspective at least, for a brand or an org, that's just free content for you, because like you don't have to own that content. Absolutely. Like if you are on the FaZe and you have this podcast and you leave, I would fully expect you to take this podcast with you. Like we're not gonna now own the IP, whatever. But just having your brand associated with these amazing creators and even the smaller communities will only help the deeper connection to the fans, to your org itself, because they're like, oh, I know Tommy, I know Hunter, whatever, because they have that show, or they have those two different shows, or oh, I see them in a piece of content in the docu-series of the team. That's cool. And that's what Optic did way back when. That's why Hitch is a thing, and that's why all these guys are a thing. So like, it works.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think that also covers the objection of, oh, our players are too busy, or our players are in season, they don't have time for content. Well, cool. If you have a staff member that has a personality for content and they enjoy it, like, why would you limit them? Worst case scenario, you try a podcast or two, you try a YouTube video or two, and it just doesn't work. And another example of this is with NYSL, Maloney, who does their TikTok. Like, he's a staff member, crushes their TikTok, crushes that new video series. I think it's called Bet. It's hilarious. It's great content, and it not only gives him a platform, but it also helps the org. Like you said, it's just more free content. So I don't know why more orgs don't do that. Maybe it's an insecurity thing. Like, oh, we don't want this person like getting too big, or I don't know. I don't really know what the issue is there, because it just seems like such a no-brainer.
Yeah, and it depends. I mean, there's a lot of different mindsets. I think Ambox does a really good job. Even like you said, Maloney or Yankson even has had a bunch of content on Ambox, and she's been absolutely killing it. So I think there's just different mindsets when it comes to different brands, where a lot of some companies, I mean, some of their executive staff are scared that they will leave, that they will outgrow them, and they'll lose a talented person, which is unfortunate, but it does happen sometimes. I always hate losing popular people or like great people, but but
it's a relatively good problem to have.
Yeah, and it just gives you good karma forever. Like,
like if you're the place where people go, not even as a quote unquote content creator, but not even as an esports athlete, but just to work and like grow your own platform and leave better off than when you came in, like, you're going to retain a good percentage of those people. And the people that do leave, they're only going to say good things about you, and you're just going to get the next wave of talent, and it just feeds into itself. I feel like it's just a little bit short-sighted to look at it like, oh, this person left, we're screwed now. So as you can tell, I get heated about this topic, because I think it matters a lot. And kind of selfishly, as someone who does create content, like, I'm hoping that wherever I end up lets me keep this podcast going. But no, I totally agree with you on that. Any other hot takes before we move on? And I'm gonna let there be a little bit of awkward silence, because I'm hoping there is at least one other hot take.
I'm just gonna say this from my own. I have no data on this whatsoever, but I don't think pre-shows work in CDL.
Interesting. Okay, let's dive into this. Obviously, no data. It's fine. Speculation. People speculate. It's nowhere.
Yeah, it's completely intuition based.
what's your opinion? I think I agree with you, but I also can see the other side, because I think some people do it well, some people don't. I don't really want to name names here, because I don't want anyone coming with pitchforks at my door. But I'm curious to hear your perspective on that.
Well, it's funny, because I think like the Optic and the LA Thieves pre-show are both like really good productions. Like, they're great and their personalities are great. I would just like to see them earlier in the week, or if it was like a day before, 2 days before, and not right before the match leading up to a match, just because I think it's conflicting with the actual match. But I think it's also like, I don't know, I just think you don't give your content enough room to breathe, because I think if you have it earlier, kind of like what we were talking about, like if you have a live show and then you have the VOD of that live show, you can get a lot more eyeballs on the VOD and a lot more traction. But you can't really if your pre-show is right before the actual thing that's happening. So all of your conversations, debates, predictions on what's about to happen are great because it creates that live conversation, but it doesn't allow for an additional conversation afterwards, which I think is really
Yeah.
important. And I even think if you did a pre-show on Wednesday and your play on Saturday and you had micro clips Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday morning, that's a ton of content and a ton of conversation around your matches right before leading up to your match, which is this huge thing.
Yeah.
Will that help
No,
viewership of the match? I don't actually know.
Yeah, I like you said, you got to see data first, but I think I tend to lean more in your direction. Like I think if your match is Thursday, like you said, even if it's Saturday, I think having a Wednesday pre-show does make sense because there are going to be those fans that want that content during the week when there are no matches. And if you go on a day where there's a match, well, there's a match. So like they're not really starving for content. They don't really, they might care. Your tight knit circle of like super fans will care, but you're not going to get everyone, and you lose the ability to repurpose it effectively. I do think the post match show works better. That's where you see the flank just absolutely dominating everything right now because people want to have that instant reaction right after, and then you have the room to repurpose for the entire week. You have the room to use the clips on Twitter, on YouTube, on TikTok. So I think that's where it works a little better. I think what they're trying to do is kind of mimic the sports, like the traditional sports thing of having that pre-show. And that just might not be an area where that parallel works. And again, we could totally be just completely wrong right now.
I would honestly, I would also be fine if you had like not two shows, but like kind of two shows where you had one on Wednesday, and then another one right before the match. And then you just say, okay, here are all our conversations that we've been having all week. It's time to go into the match and see if we're right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Even if it's just like half an hour before, like just kind of hyping it up real quick and then immediately funneling viewership into the match. Or if you do like something like what the Rocker do and co-stream it, well, start just half an hour early.
Yeah, exactly.
Lead it directly right into the co-stream. And that way it's not super long or drawn out. And it feels like it makes more sense.
I do like post-match, like you said, with Flank, and even Looney does hindsight, which I think is really, really great. I think Looney is one of the smartest players in the league. I think he's incredibly smart, and I'm excited to see where he'll go.
Yeah, it makes sense. Are there any other content ideas that you'd like to see implemented? My like dream scenario, I know this is not practical at all, but like a Drive to Survive for COD. I feel like there are a lot of potential storylines to capitalize on there, and it might be able to give the smaller teams like a little bit of an even playing field. Like you see in F1, there are teams that nowhere near Mercedes or Red Bull or any of those like top tier teams, but they get exposure in the documentary. So I think something like that, if it ever was practical to do, would be amazing. But is there anything like that in your head where you're like, I would love to see this? Any of those types of opinions?
I would. I've always wanted to do a morning show for esports, and have like a live morning show where everybody has coffee and just talks about whatever's happening in esports and gaming. I think someone like Esports News or someone would be great at doing this, something like this, especially with Jake. His brand is perfect, but I've always wanted to see that, and I think I got it from I don't know if you know the brand Kind of Funny, but they used to have the Kind of Funny morning show, and it was great. It was perfect. And I don't know. I like those kind of classic traditional TV kind of shows pushing their way into esports. I think that's a really interesting idea, and I also just like live form long content.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think I think Jake Lucky would be like the perfect person to undertake that. I mean, I don't know if he'd be able to, because that dude, I don't even know how many videos he pumps out on a daily basis. It's just absurd. Like I put out one video a week or two sometimes. I'm exhausted. I don't know how he does like 3 or 4 in a day.
That's why I do not produce content.
Yeah, no, it's something else. I can't wait till the day I'm able to hire an editor. That'll be like the best day of my life.
Those are always the best.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. There was a question that was on the tip of my tongue, and I'm losing it right now. Well, I'm thinking of that. Any other hot takes you can think of?
I don't know. I don't have any crazy ideas. Not yet. Like, when Land comes back, I might have a crazy idea.
Got you. Now, I have a question. When it comes to social, I know you said you guys aren't changing a whole lot there, but I'm curious. Obviously, Twitter is kind of like the place to be for esports and COD specifically, is where most people hang out. It's pretty active. What other platform performs really well for you guys? Is there another like standout platform like, yo, you know what? This is actually like a place where we really should focus on, aside from the traditional, like, yeah, let's be active on Twitter and post memes on there and be active on there and engage there. Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? What is that for you guys?
It's definitely Instagram.
Okay.
That which is actually really interesting to me because what I found looking at our content is normally what I consider like, okay, photos work really well on Instagram, memes are going to work really well on Twitter. But actually on our Instagram, our memes do a lot better than our photos. I'm like, this is really interesting and weird. Okay, cool. So yeah, our Instagram actually has been doing really well lately, and even like when I do these monthly reports, I'm always finding usually our impressions on Instagram overshadow our impressions on Twitter, and the
Really?
range between the Atlanta FaZe Instagram and every other CDL team on Instagram is insane. Is like, so I have a giant league table of like the league average impressions,
Yeah.
followers, whatever, and then I have us, and our follower growth 140% larger than the league average. Like, that is nuts. That's a
Yeah.
crazy
That's a great place to. Why do you think that is? Is it more like y'all just put a lot more, like a disproportional amount of effort in there, or is it something else? Like, what do you think that is? Or is it just that the team is really, really good and people want to keep up with the team? Like, what do you think is driving that that above average growth?
I think it's a lot of different things. I think we do a good job at keeping our posting volume up pretty high. I think that's something I
Yeah.
also track a lot, and we are usually one of the higher numbers. And then it's also about like player buy-in, and it's about having support from FaZe Clan never hurts anybody, and just different things like that. I think a big thing was all of our events and all are very Instagram story based. So like we just held the Atlanta FaZe Gold Rush, which was a super great event, and just utilizing
Yeah.
the influencers there to kind of grow our own audience. And the strategy we implemented for that was a huge benefactor for growing our Instagram audience, I think. So a lot of different strategies that play into each other, and I think utilize that. I'm thinking about a different event that a different org through, and I don't remember. No, New York is throwing one now, or is they have a Warzone event right now?
I think I know New York has an event going on right now. I forget exactly. I think I think it is a Warzone event.
Yeah, so they'll probably have a boost, and we won't be as good for June.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What have you found to be kind of that optimal posting frequency?
I think it differs for every platform. I think I've tried
Yeah.
to do at least once a day on Instagram. Twice a day is fine. And
Okay.
then I actually don't think Twitter has a cap on how much you can post in a day. I think you can post
Yeah.
15 times in a day, and if it makes sense, it makes sense. Which is funny. I've heard a lot of people say that there's a diminishing return on engagement there, and I have not seen it yet. So until I see it, then I will tell you what that cap is.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I feel like you said on Twitter, if it makes sense, it makes sense. Like if you're covering a match and like some crazy shit's going on, you're gonna want to cover that and the engagement's gonna be there. But if you're just spamming the TL like on a random Tuesday when nothing's going on, like and it's not like super valuable content, well, yeah, of course the engagement's not going to be there because it's just not relevant. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and that's why
But yeah,
I've tried not to force content. A lot of
yeah,
because there has been a lot of times in other companies I've worked with where it's like, okay, we need to post once a day, and I'm like, well, if there's not a good post, then there's not a good post. And I'm all for like asking questions or polls or engagement posts or whatever, but like if I've done 3 of those, I'm not doing another one. I'm gonna wait.
what's your least favorite engagement strategy that actually works? Because like for me, I always see the one that's like for this, retweet for this, reply for this, and like we can hate on it. We can just say like, oh god, that's so tacky. But sometimes it works. Is there anything like that for you, where you see it, you're like, oh god, but it actually gets the job done?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of those. I think it's the like if you're awake right now or something, or I think Austin's favorite is like
Real
"Give Me Your
grinders
Current
mode right
Emotions"
now.
or something. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, and it's like all of those are kind of like you know what they're doing, but then it's also funny because I feel like it's just the COD community who gets really into those. Um, we tried for the League of Legends community on Immortals, did not work. Tried really
Okay.
kind of for the Overwatch League, didn't really work. So it's
Yeah.
weird that it's just Call of Duty that is
What
really into
what do
those.
you think it is about the COD community that
I
leads
don't
them to?
know. That's what I was trying to. I've always been trying to figure this out. Like I don't know what makes that community different. Where it's like we always want to pick our favorite gun in Black Ops 1 or something. Like I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like the COD community does get pretty heated over like you said, what is your favorite gun or what's the best map or stuff like that. But even like it's not stupid, but like Octane once in a while will post like the 6 foot roll call,
Oh
and
yeah.
the replies are just flooded. It's like here, here, here. I understand why that actually works because you want to flex if they're over 6 feet. Like I flex my height whenever I get the chance, but like it's just hilarious how those things work so well. Um, Speaking of like the differences between COD, Overwatch, League, um, what have you noticed in terms of how those communities differ in the way they interact with content and what type of content performs well? And that could be like an entire podcast in and of
Yeah.
itself. So don't worry about getting too deep into it. But it, like on the surface, what are your impressions there?
I think it's I think each of the different audiences is interesting. I've always like looked at it kind of from an intuition standpoint where I'm like I can't like tell you like well I actually can't because we did a bunch of audience segmentation on each of the audiences. Like the Call of Duty audience is the most
Yeah.
similar to traditional sports, and
Okay.
the Overwatch audience is most traditional to entertainment and anime and stuff like that. Like Marvel Universe,
Got you.
DC, whatever. Like
Yeah.
they'll go crazy over that. Whereas, so like if you're posting anything sports related on an Overwatch account, you're probably not going to get a lot of engagement on it. Um,
Interesting.
but even like about the tone, like the tone is so different. Even and I feel that subconsciously when I am tweeting from either account because so it was really weird on Sunday. I think both Rain and FaZe played, and I was
Yeah.
tweeting from both accounts, and it was my brain just like kept switching between the different voices, uh, and it was really funny. And I think I've learned that subconsciously over my time of doing 2 accounts. I've done 2 accounts pretty much, or at least 2 accounts for years now. So it's been an interesting
Mhm.
skill to learn.
Got you. Do you think the parallel between like COD and sports posts has to do with like the region or like what do you think drives that?
No, I think it's just the type of person. I think like the standard Call of Duty player is more likely to be a sports fan than the standard Overwatch player, and I because I think
Yeah.
even if you look, it's also the Call of Duty community is a much more like sports teamwork oriented community. Like we're such a
Hmm.
in the Call of Duty community, it's such a tight knit group that like we all learn from each other and we all bounce like the lingo in the Call of Duty is something you will never find like any other esport. Like not even League
Yeah.
has the amount of lingo that Call of Duty has. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's also weird how fast you pick it up. Like I didn't really work from like November until April. And as
Hmm.
soon as I started back in April, I'm like, ah, this is chalked. It's chalked.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's just in my vocab now. And like
Yeah.
I wouldn't even consider myself super like hardcore like as a COD player, but just through consuming the content, it's just kind of seeped its way into like Chalked is one of them. I'm trying to think what another one would be.
Lostful is
Um,
something that I've recently started picking up.
Lostful, Cracked, like
I've started saying
it's
no bullshit a lot. Like I'll think it in my head and I'll be like, why did I just like of course. Like
that's hilarious.
that was
Does that
something
also oh, go ahead.
Yashi used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
I think I picked that up from him when we were in the LA training camp and I just picked it up ever since because I even like hear it in his tone. I'm
Yeah.
like, damn, he just implanted it in my head.
Yeah, for sure. That also impacts like copy. I mean, that kind of just goes to show the importance of understanding that community because you could like have the numbers and the demographics, but like if you don't really understand how they speak, whether it's an Overwatch, whether it's COD, whether it's League, whether it's like Hearthstone or something, if you don't understand that, you're gonna have a tough time doing well on social if you're not able to communicate in the way that the audience is used to being communicated to.
Yeah, that's the hardest part when someone says like on hill 1 and not P1, like even that small of a detail, like the Call of Duty fans will pick up on that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's super important. I was thinking too when you're mentioning like the parallel between like sports and COD and like, entertainment and Overwatch, that has to also impact like sponsorships and partnerships, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it goes into like some sponsors don't like Red Blood, some sponsors don't like FPS at all. So I would say each have their own difficulties, but yeah, definitely the different vibe. And sometimes you don't have the luxury of being choosy about your sponsors, but
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of, like you'll see it. I'm trying to think of a good example, like kind of like I would say HyperX is a good Overwatch sponsor because that's their brand is very clean, but it's also kind of fun and lighthearted. Whereas like Astro,
Yeah.
I would say, is a very good Call of Duty sponsor because they're super pristine and nice and almost streetwear lifestyle esque. So it definitely matters. I don't think Astro would ever sponsor an Overwatch team.
Yeah, no, that's funny. You gotta love the Astro listenings. I think that matches perfectly.
Yeah, and it always has really since I
For
was
sure.
playing Call of Duty in high school and tournaments.
Well, dude, this hour just absolutely flew by. I have a couple more questions for you before we wrap it up. The first one being, if you had to give just like one takeaway for someone watching this podcast to take away and walk away with after listening to this, it could be something we talked about earlier. It could be something we didn't even touch on, but just one message you want someone to leave this podcast episode with. What would that be?
My message for that has always been to allow yourself to be human.
Cool. No, I love that. I think it's super important. Like we are talking about earlier, I know we had the conversation on the timeline about like social media and like how you can kind of get sucked in there. I think it's definitely super important to be okay with, like you said, not being super focused or losing yourself in social for a minute or making a mistake at work, whatever the case may be. Myself included, a lot of people tend to try to be a little bit too perfect. So really, really
Yeah,
important message. I'm glad you ended on that.
yeah. Too many
Now,
people. There's already a lot of people judging you, and you don't need to be
yeah,
another one.
that's a good way to look at it. Now, the last question I have for you, arguably the most important question of the show: do you drink coffee, and if so, how do you drink your coffee?
I drink black coffee every day.
Cool.
So
I respect that answer.
I drink about yeah. I actually stop myself at 2 cups of coffee every day, and I have always I haven't always drank it black, but I have learned to drink it black because I think adding sugar and stuff
Yeah,
is just going to make it unhealthy. And if I'm drinking it every day, I want it to be as healthy as possible.
love that. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm a cold brew person. Drink it black. Try to limit myself to 2 cups a day. Depends. Like I said earlier, it's finals week now, so that rule kind of goes out the window. But overall, I think cold brew is the way to go. If you're gonna drink it hot though, definitely black is the way to go. So I
I
respect
think
that answer. The only
espresso
one
is
I
the way to
don't
go.
respect is yes, I would agree as well. I think the only way not to go, besides like the frappuccinos and all that at that point really isn't coffee. I think the only way not to go is iced coffee. I will die on that hill. There's a distinct difference between cold brew and iced coffee.
There
And
is. I don't mind iced coffee though. I would actually probably prefer iced coffee though, over cold.
all right, so this podcast is gonna get deleted as soon as we
We're done.
end the show. The VOD's not gonna be up.
Never
Just don't
existed.
even try to look for it. Never existed. We're bearing the evidence. All right.
R.I.P.
No, I'm kidding though, but I respect it as long as you drink coffee. Actually, you know what? I respect the answer of not drinking coffee more because caffeine is
Built
definitely an
different.
addiction, and it can get away from you quite a bit. So, whenever someone says they don't drink coffee, I'm like, dude, how? Like, please teach me how do you do that?
Yeah, that is nuts. I can't do it. I even like not even about the caffeine. I do like the caffeine of it, but I also just like the taste of coffee, especially like a
Yeah,
really good brand of coffee. Like,
yeah,
oh, it's great.
agreed.
A happy
Well,
place.
dude, where's the best place for everyone to keep up with what you're doing personally and also with what the Atlanta FaZe is doing, Atlanta Rain? Like, where's the best place to find all those things?
Twitter and Instagram definitely, probably not Facebook because I don't prioritize Facebook ever. But It's Atlanta FaZe on, or ATL FaZe on everything, ATL Rain on everything, and H Braine on everything. Except for Twitch, where H Braine was taken because somebody stole my dick.
You gotta pay the ransom to get the username back if you can get in contact.
It might have been me. I might have just forgotten the password.
That's also a very real possibility. But no, I'll link all those in the description down below. If you're watching, Hunter's personal username on Twitter is on the screen right now, so you can follow him there. I'll link all the other socials in the comments or in the description, in the show notes, wherever you're listening or watching this. And of course, I appreciate you guys watching all the way till the end. If you're on YouTube and you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to hit that subscribe button for new esports marketing videos every single week. And if you're on audio, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever the case may be, hit that follow button. Also, drop a 5-star rating and review down below. That helps the show grow, get in front of more people, helps people understand that maybe I know what I'm doing a little bit about hosting a podcast. I'd really appreciate that. I know there's a lot of calls to action. So if you're going to take away one thing from all those, just hit the subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. And with that, I will go ahead and see you guys in the next episode.